Welcome to Nadine's Arts House here on The Voice 17104. Nadine's Arts House is written and produced by Nadine Burrows Jameson and husband Bill, right here in 17104. Today at Nadine's Arts House, well, you know how discussions go. You start off talking about the president and Papa John and the First Amendment, and who knows where it ends up. Female fish that reproduce without the help of a male. A biological reality, by the way, of the Damali in the Amazon, and certain types of carp and minnows. The ladies say wanted to have to go there, but we gotta stop beating on them and doing abuse. Get it, men? The ladies have a point. Today on Nadine's Arts House, a discussion of domestic abuse. But before we get started, did you hear about LaShawn McCoy? Yeah, the Buffalo Bill.
Well, images of pomp and ceremony as Donald Trump meets the Queen in the magnificent setting of Windsor Castle, the sorts of images that he will absolutely want people back in America to see, but happening simultaneously as he arrived at Windsor Castle with the First Lady, scenes of huge protest in central London too. The focus of the protest now at Trafalgar Square, which the Metropolitan Police said a little earlier was at capacity.
Do you accept, though, that he was voted in? He is the US president. Therefore, he has to come to...
Been voted in, but he's not acting like a leader and he's not acting like a president. The country that I came from, which is South Africa, I always say to people, be very careful when a politician tells you who you need to hate, because there's an agenda in the background.
Well, I mean, though, that he was voted in. He is the US president. Therefore, he has to come to
we were talking, and in the conversation Bill and I were having, he was saying he was trying to get to Russia the day of.
You mean Trump was all along trying to be there for the final of the World Cup?
We were all laughing because Trump never made himself out to be a soccer fan.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, well, we know how he feels about American football, or at least about the First Amendment rights of the people who play it.
Yeah, him and Papa John.
Wait, here's that story.
Tom, thank you very much. Tom Burridge in Trafalgar Square. And
tonight, newly released 911 calls reveal the panic after a break-in at this home in suburban Atlanta, owned by Buffalo Bills star running back LaShawn McCoy.
Were weapons involved or mentioned, ma'am?
Yes, a gun. I got hit in the face, like me and my cousin, and I had, oh my God.
The brutal attack by an unknown assailant left McCoy's ex-girlfriend, Alicia Cordone, who was living there, severely beaten and hospitalized.
He took my jewelry off my bracelet, my diamond bracelet off my wrist, and he just kept asking for jewelry.
Okay.
He got something to do with my ex-boyfriend.
In an Instagram post since deleted, Cordone's friend blames McCoy, calling him the devil and an animal. For the record, McCoy fired back, the totally baseless and offensive claims made against me are completely false. Furthermore, I have not had any direct contact with any of the people involved in months. Court records show McCoy had been trying to evict Cordone from his home for more than a year. Police aren't saying whether they believe he may have somehow been involved in the break-in. Cordone's lawyer tells us that her client is now out of the hospital. In a statement, the NFL says it is reviewing the case. The Players Association had no comment. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, Milton, Georgia.
Yeah, here we go again. He hasn't talked to any of them in months. He says, huh? So how was he trying to evict her and get the jury back?
Pretty cheesy for a millionaire.
I say.
Trying to get his gifts back. Sounds like a hurt guy.
I thought all those football guys like to dominate, do their own beating.
Honey, do you know what his nickname is?
What? No, wait. I remember. I know.
Shady! Yeah, Shady. Now, how did he come up with that name growing up? Shady?
What is it with these football players? The NFL, too.
Remember when the NFL straightened it all out with a single Super Bowl ad? Whew, how graceless.
The NFL will play its first Super Bowl PSA, and it raises awareness on the issue of domestic violence.
911, operator 901. Where's the emergency?
127 Brynmere.
Okay, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency line.
How long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
And you're unable to talk because...
Right.
Okay, is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house?
No.
Can you stay on the phone with me?
No. See you soon. Thank you.
So that was actually based on a 911 call that was placed by a woman who was a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah. So I like that the NFL is doing this. Of course, this is the right thing to do. They had a rough year where they were in a lot of trouble for not responding to domestic violence. And what we found out was that they actually used to fairly regularly bury charges of domestic violence and would help the players get beyond it instead of helping their wives oftentimes. So they're doing the best they can. Obviously, it's also for PR reasons and stuff, but I don't mind that. I mean, if you're going to do the right thing and you're doing it because you care about your bottom line and you want people to have a good image of you, that's okay, as long as you do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that the imagery used in that PSA is going to make a lot of women who are victims of domestic violence realize that they're victims, because I don't think a lot of women know that they're in an abusive relationship. They might think that the person loves them and, the person, doesn't beat them. But when you see things like, furniture tossed around and holes in the walls and things like that, I mean, that might spark something in you. You might realize that you have an abusive relationship.
And that was a powerful ad. I think it was jarring. It caught people's attention. You're like, wait, what's up with the pizza, et cetera? And then you find out it's based on a real call. And you realize that's when people are really scared for their lives, right? When they can't tell you why they called 911 and they got to speak in code. And so it's chilling. And so it's good to see them react in this way. They've taken a lot of heat throughout the year, deservedly so. At least they're trying to make amends in some small ways.
Absolutely.
Yes, I certainly agree with that.
You do?
Well, yes, in some small way. In some very small way. Look, girl, you got a bunch of big freaking men who make a living dominating other big freaking men next to them.
Then maybe they shouldn't have run such a subtle ad. A real 911 call. Are they still running it?
No.
Tell me, girlfriend. Are they making an issue of it still?
You heard their non-response to McCoy. Well, and the players' union, too.
When we write our piece on this issue, I got a 911 call for you.
Oh.
On the 21st, 1991, time 22:13 hours. This will be a 911 call, position CT07.
Standing emergency. Standing emergency.
My mom and Daddy are having a fight.
Is he hitting her?
Stop it! Send the police, please.
Okay, we're going to be there. We're taking your Let me talk to you. Where's your mom? What's going on?
They're having a fight because this is bingo forever and ever. They always have this because he has a cousin. He's always drinking beer and getting drunk. And Mom,
What's his name? What is his name? Your father's name?
He's my stepfather.
Okay, how old is he? What's going on? Lisa? Party, what's going on?
Hurting Mommy.
How's he hurting her?
He made his mommy.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to send the police.
Okay.
That, honey, is the real reason or the sound of domestic violence. Oh, nothing subtle about it.
That's a tough one. You have to listen to a 6-year-old having to make that call.
Understanding the situation so well.
Don't you think that's one of the more disturbing aspects of this whole issue, youth?
Yes, don't we? We will write that. In the school system, I oftentimes learned of young boys, teenagers abusing young girl teenagers, so-called boyfriends and girlfriends.
You mean they mistake abuse for love?
I mean, I'm not sure what it means. Sometimes it's that.
On both sides?
Like a girl thinking a boy loves her because he slapped her. Maybe sometimes. But where? Where and when does a boy learn to abuse? Abuse is more than physical.
Look, I know a girl, a young married girl, and her husband tells her she's ugly.
What?
That nobody else would ever want her. Because, maybe sometimes she thinks it would be better to be slapped. These are young people, and they say most abuse is suffered by the young. Listen to Chantel Casaro.
Daddy tried to tell me things wouldn't stick, but the next thing you know, I'm down on the floor, hands wrapped around my neck, I couldn't breathe no more. Mama crying on the phone, hearing everything, but when she asked, I knew I couldn't tell her anything. What kind of woman would she think that I was if she knew the way he beat me and the things that he had done? The first time you said, I'm sorry, babe, you're gonna stay. The next time, Nikki helped me pack and run away. You chased the van and I remember I could hear your cries. You told me, baby, if you love me, look into my eyes. Well, when I was looking through the fucking glass, the only thing that I could think is that I wish she hit the gas. And then I thought of everything you said that night. Every time you raised your hand and every time you picked a fight. Just beat me. I ain't pretty unless I got a black eye. Beat me. I'm sorry, baby, next time I won't cry. Beat me. Everything's my fault. I'm to blame. Beat me. I'll try to wear these scars proud, no shame. Beat me. Another teardrop on the floor. Beat me. Another face slammed into a fucking door. It's okay, babe, I'll take all the blame. I'll take every last beat and I'll take every bit of pain. Just beat me. November, guess we missed a step in what we did. Because according to the test, it says we got a kid. But that don't really matter to you, does it? Cause at 5 months pregnant, you could kick me in my stomach. Another night at the club, I was working late. Nevaeh said, what's on your thigh? I told her it was straight. It's just a bruise where I fell. She said, you can't bullshit me. He beat you with a belt. What was I thinking when I turned around and came back? What was I thinking coming back to the same crap? I gave you all of my heart, and in the end, you just ripped it up and tore it all apart. Sleeping around while I was pregnant, I was hurt, I was crying, thinking I should slit my wrist. Went from homecoming princess to this. but I learned to fight back, stay strong and use my fist while he beat me. I fought back and still got a black eye. Beat me, sat there and didn't flinch, didn't cry. Beat me, everything was his fault, he's the blame. Beat me, a fist full of rage, a mind full of shame. Beat me, another teardrop on the floor. Beat me, hit me so my stomach hits the door. And now I'm gone, you can take all the blame. I took every last beat and I took every bit of pain. You can't beat me. So I moved back home and had my baby girl, perfect and healthy, and now she's mommy's whole world. I got my heart back and got over you, but I fell in love for real, and it's with somebody new. The nightmares are slowing down over time. The memories, I try to block them out my mind. And just remember, this one ain't you. He's a lover and he's faithful and he'll always stay true. So I hope you're happy where you're at in life now. I hope you're happy with your son and wife now. Honestly, I wish it all fell apart, but you reap what you sow, so that's a pretty good start. I hope for a lot of things and got true love, and got my daughter, she's an angel from above. But the only thing I hope and I pray is she never has to go through what I did and has to say, beat me, I ain't pretty unless I got a black eye. Beat me, I'm sorry baby, next time I won't cry. Beat me, everything is my fault, I'm to blame. Beat me, try to wear these scars proud, no shame. Beat me, another teardrop on the floor. Beat me, another face slammed into a fucking door. It's okay, babe, I'll take all the blame. I'll take every last beat and I'll take every bit of pain. Just beat me. Just beat me.
She's 19, 18 and 19 when she's having this experience.
And the one thing that separates her from a lot of her young sisters is she got out of it. Hate to have to say this about my friend, but honey, I wish you would.
And somehow we feel that we can't say that. Chantel said when the beating started, she could not tell her mother.
We don't want to tell anyone that our marriage is that wrong.
And we don't want to tell anyone that their marriage is that wrong.
Until we learn with age.
Or not. How will we write about the reasons women stay in abusive, often even violent relationships? What will keep your young friend there in that relationship with a man telling her she's ugly all the time? I bet he says he's going to leave her.
He says it all the time. When I look at it, why she would stay, it will be because of her family. It will be due to, I call it, the social glue.
I'm here today to talk about a disturbing question, which has an equally disturbing answer. My topic is the secrets of domestic violence. And the question I'm going to tackle is the one question everyone always asks. Why does she stay? Why would anyone stay with a man who beats her? I'm not a psychiatrist, a social worker, or an expert in domestic violence. I'm just one woman with a story to tell. I was 22. I had just graduated from Harvard College. I'd moved to New York City for my first job as a writer and editor at 17 magazine. I had my first apartment, my first little green American Express card, and I had a very big secret. My secret was that I had this gun loaded with hollow point bullets pointed at my head by the man who I thought was my soulmate many, many times. The man who I loved more than anybody on earth held a gun to my head and threatened to kill me more times than I can even remember. I'm here to tell you the story of crazy love, a psychological trap disguised as love, one that millions of women and even a few men fall into every year. It may even be your story. I don't look like a typical domestic violence survivor. I have a BA in English from Harvard College, an MBA in marketing from Wharton Business School. I spent most of my career working for Fortune 500 companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Leo Burnett, and the Washington Post. I've been married for almost 20 years to my second husband, and we have 3 kids together. My dog is a black lab, and I drive a Honda Odyssey minivan. So my first message for you is that domestic violence happens to everyone. All races, all religions, all income and education levels. It's everywhere. And my second message is that everyone thinks domestic violence happens to women, that it's a women's issue. Not exactly. Over 85% of abusers are men. And domestic abuse happens only in intimate, interdependent, long-term relationships. In other words, in families. The last place we would want or expect to find violence, which is one reason domestic abuse is so confusing. I would have told you myself that I was the last person on earth who would stay with a man who beats me. But in fact, I was a very typical victim because of my age. I was 22. And in the United States, women ages 16 to 24 are 3 times as likely to be domestic violence victims as women of other ages. And over 500 women and girls this age are killed every year by abusive partners, boyfriends and husbands in the United States.
You're right. Some cultures insist we suffer marriage more than others, but it seems in the end, almost all cultures insist on it.
Chantel's culture and my friend's culture, the same. Revere the macho man.
In a macho culture, girlfriend, women are socialized to be objects, things, to such strong men.
And in some cultures, the women are taught to just be compliant.
How would they spell abuse?
Well, my husband told me when he lived in Liberia, the law was you could beat your wife, your woman, but the stick you beat her with cannot be thicker than your thumb.
You mean legally?
Yes, legally. To legally beat your girlfriend or your wife, your woman, the stick you use cannot be bigger than the thickness of your thumb.
I got you. I get it. Forgive me for appearing incredulous.
Oh, you're forgiven. He said he'd broken up with his ex-girlfriend, but she kept coming around, and it was bothering him.
Ex? Huh? Ex like McCoy's ex, who he'd not been talking to, but who is living in his house while he's trying to get his jewelry back? Oh, you mean that kind of ex?
She kept coming around, and one night he picked up a stick and was chasing her to beat her with it.
You're kidding me. What happened?
He said it must have been a cultural thing. Live in Liberia long enough, and you start acting Liberian.
Good excuse. What happened?
Fortunately, Masa, that was her name, Masa, a Gola girl. Masa was a high school track star, and while screaming to the top of her lungs, "He's going to beat me," with glee, he says that she was screaming gleefully.
That's the way he heard it. Oh, I'm sure.
She stayed well ahead of him, running towards the bush, the forest. Finally, he stopped. He's out of breath and stood there looking up at the bright moon, and then down at his moon shadow in the field. He asked himself, "What are you doing?" And he wondered what would he do if he had caught up with her. Beat her for real? He had never seen himself as that kind of man.
At the start of every morning, I would wake with dread about what was going to happen.
Hundreds of thousands of Australian women suffer at the hands of the men who are supposed to love them.
Angela, do you ever get used to being hit?
No, not at all.
Two women on what should have been the happiest day of their lives, Angela Ivkovic and Sharon Schmidt. But when they said, "I do," they were about to become not wives, but victims. Tonight, in a rare insight, Sharon's former husband, Steve Stainer, tries to put words to his abominable actions. It takes a lot of courage to sit here and admit, I beat up my wife. Why have you decided to do that?
I don't know if courage is the right word, but you know, it's something that I felt that I had to do. I think to send a message to other fellas, you know, to just stop and have a look at yourself.
As you sit here now, you're still quite capable of flaring up and hitting out.
I think so. I think that everybody's capable of it.
How many times did he try to kill you?
I think I lost count. Choking me, knife across the throat, slamming my head into a mirror.
Sharon Schmidt and Steve Stainer had been teenage sweethearts. 30 years later, they met and fell in love again.
He told me he loved me for 30 years.
The first time he hit you, what was that like?
I was shocked. And he made fun of my shock.
Sharon was trapped with an angry, violent and controlling man. This phone video, filmed by Sharon's son, shows Steve throwing her to the ground. But this is Steve's explanation.
Yeah, I tried to give her a hug. She didn't want that.
Were you really trying to hug her?
Well, I tried to, like I said, I tried to hug her. She resisted that.
You didn't throw her to the ground?
Well, that's debatable, you know. No, I don't believe I did, but...
You can soundly hear the equivocation, and that's the man who wants to come clean. Let's not talk about the men who are still so chock full of excuses, especially look what you made me do. What do you do? Men are the problem, and men don't seem to want to face up to it. You know, speaking of chasing someone with a stick, his out is still that she provoked him.
Of course. I know.
So basically, like with most things that are wrong, men are so full of excuses.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. So now you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. If I'd known for just 1 second, you'd be back to bother me. Go on now, go. Walk down the door. Just turn around now. Sure not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to hurt me with your spy? Did you think I'd crumble? Did you think I'd lay down and die? Oh no, not I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, and I've got all my love to give, and I'll survive. I will survive. I will survive. Only the Lord to give me strength not to fall apart. Though I tried hard to mend the pieces of my broken heart. And I spent oh so many nights just feeling sorry for myself. I used to cry. But now I hold my head up high and you see me. Somebody new. I'm not that chained up little person still in love with you. And so you felt like dropping in and just expecting to be free. Well, now I'm saving all my loving for someone who's loving me. Go on now, go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now. 'Cause you're
There are fish, like the molly fish, that when the male population comes under stress, the females go on reproducing without them. Stop the violence. Families, stop it. This is Janine Bookwater. Good day from Nadine's Arts House.
Vaughn, I sure hope it never comes down to that, Janine. But yes, please stop the violence. But it will be what it will be. This is Nadine Rose Jameson. Good day from Nadine's Arts House.
I will survive. And as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, and I've got all my love to give, and I'll survive. I will survive. I will survive. Only the Lord can give me strength not to fall apart. Though I try hard to mend the pieces of my broken heart. And I spent so many nights just feeling sorry for myself. I used to cry. But now I hold my head up high and you see me. Somebody new. I'm not that chained up little person. I'm still in love with you. And so you felt like dropping in and just expect me to be free. Well, now I'm saying it all.
Today, on Nadine's Arts House, quite a discussion and quite a startling conclusion. Men, let's get ourselves together and be righteous. You know, righteous to the opposite sex. I don't understand it. What have we gained from it otherwise?
This has been a presentation of Nadine's Arts House. Nadine's Arts House is written and produced right here in the 17104 by Nadine and Bill Jameson. Stay tuned next week for an all-new episode of The Arts House, original and on the air.